Chosen one, lock your attention on this message right now. That restless feeling pulling at you, the one that won't let you sit still, won't let you sleep through the night, won't let you look away from this screen. Do not silence it. That is not anxiety. That is a divine summons. The enemy is working overtime right now for one reason and one reason only. He knows that what God has placed in your hands is about to change everything, and he is desperate to keep you distracted for just a few more days. It all ends now. The stalling, the second-guessing, the unexplained paralysis. But hear this clearly, because this is the part that matters most. It is not ending because circumstances changed. It is ending because God just issued you a direct command. Think back to that moment this week, when you sat down to finally do the work, the project, the application, the assignment, the thing you know you were built for, and something pulled you away. A notification, a wave of exhaustion, a voice that said tomorrow would be better. You thought that was just life getting in the way. It was not. That was interference. And the fact that you are still carrying that unfinished thing, still feeling the weight of it pressing on your chest, means the window has not closed. You are still in it. But the urgency has shifted. You did not stumble onto this message. The algorithm did not bring you here. God did. This is a divine appointment that was written into your timeline before you drew your first breath. You are not here by accident. You are here because heaven needed to reach you before the moment passed. Stay until the very last word of this message, because in the next few minutes, I'm going to hand you the exact spiritual decree that breaks the spirit of delay off your assignment. I'm going to show you the moment you unknowingly activated your own stalling, not through failure, but through a test you did not know you were taking. And at the end, I am going to give you the declaration that seals your obedience and releases the blessing that has been held in suspension, waiting for you to move. Do not scroll away. The version of you that finishes what God started is on the other side of this message. If you leave now, you leave before the command is fully delivered. I know what the last 72 hours have felt like. The atmosphere around you has not just been busy, it has been thick. Heavy in a way that is hard to explain to someone who has not felt it. Maybe you have been moving all week but producing nothing, running from task to task, and still falling asleep at night with the specific feeling that the most important thing went untouched. Or maybe you have been completely still, frozen actually, staring at what needs to be done, knowing it is yours to do, but unable to take the first step without understanding why it feels so enormous. Or perhaps you woke up at 3 in the morning this week with a jolt, heart pounding, that unfinished work sitting heavy on your chest even in the dark, and you told yourself you would handle it in the morning, and then morning came and the weight only doubled. You feel suspended between the call and the completion, like you were handed something sacred and then lost the courage to carry it across the finish line. And in that suspension, the enemy has been whispering a very specific lie. He has been telling you that the delay is your fault, that you had your window and you hesitated, and now the timing is off. He has been replaying that moment when you put it down, that moment when you told yourself you were not ready, that moment when you chose rest over obedience or distraction over discipline. And now he is using that moment as a weapon, telling you that because of it, God has moved on, that the assignment is now less anointed, that the opportunity is stale, that someone else has already done it better. But I need you to hear what the Word of God actually says about this moment. Ecclesiastes 9:10 says, "Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might." Listen to what that is saying. Not whatever your hand already finished, not whatever your hand did perfectly. Whatever your hand finds to do, meaning the thing still in front of you, the thing still waiting, the thing you have not completed yet, do it with all your might. The command is present tense. God is not speaking to a past version of you who missed the moment. He is speaking to you right now, in this moment, about the work that is still alive and still assigned to your hands. The delay did not disqualify you. The delay was the preparation. The heaviness you feel around that unfinished work is not the weight of failure. It is the weight of divine urgency. It is heaven pressing down on your chest, not to punish you, but to mobilize you. God does not command dead assignments. He does not send summons to abandoned causes. The very fact that it still burns in you, the fact that you cannot shake it, cannot talk yourself out of it, cannot make peace with leaving it undone, that is not guilt. That is God. You thought the procrastination meant you were not ready. Let me reframe your reality right now. The waiting was not weakness. It was God holding the moment open long enough for you to receive the instruction. And this message is the instruction. The command has been issued. The work is still yours, and the time is now. Hit the like button if you feel this message found you at exactly the right moment. Drop a comment below. What is the one thing you know God has called you to finish? And what has been the loudest voice telling you to wait? Now let me tell you what actually happened in that moment when you put it down. Because there is a spiritual dynamic at work here that most people never get to see. And if you leave this message without understanding it, you will be vulnerable to the same interference the next time you try to move. So, stay with me, because this is where it gets precise. When God places an assignment in your hands, He does not just give you a task, He gives you a test. And the test is never about your talent. It is never about your ability to execute. The test is always about one thing. Will you move when heaven says move, even when the conditions are not comfortable, even when the timing feels inconvenient, even when no one is watching and no one is applauding, and everything inside you is screaming that you are not ready yet? This divine assignment is not merely a blueprint for action. It is a spiritual crucible, a refining fire designed not to burn you, but to burn away everything that is not authentically you. The world often measures success by visible results, by the applause of crowds, or by the perfect alignment of circumstances. But heaven operates on a different metric. This test, beloved one, is not a performance review of your skills, for God, who wove you in your mother's womb, knows every thread of your talent, every facet of your capability. He doesn't test your capacity. He tests your commitment to His timing, your willingness to step into the unknown purely on the strength of His word. It's about whether you will launch into the deep when the waters look turbulent, whether you will sow your seed in the desolate field, whether you will speak the truth when your voice trembles and the world prefers silence. It is about those moments when the internal landscape of your soul is a tempest, screaming that you are inadequate, ill-equipped, or utterly unprepared, yet the gentle, persistent whisper of the Spirit urges you forward. Will you trust the whisper more than the roar of your own perceived limitations, or the silent judgment of an unseen audience? This is the test of the heart, a testament to the unshakable faith that activates divine intervention. It's the moment where your faith moves from theory to tangible action, a demonstration that the voice of God carries more weight than the collective doubt of every earthly voice, including your own inner critic. This is the divine summons that bypasses logical analysis and calls directly to the spirit of obedience within you, demanding a response that transcends human comfort and convenience. And here is what makes this test so difficult. It does not feel like a test. It feels like wisdom. It feels responsible to wait. It feels spiritually mature to say, I need more time, more preparation, more confirmation. The enemy is far too intelligent to come at you with an obvious distraction. He does not tempt the chosen with laziness. He tempts you with reasonableness. He makes the delay sound like discernment. He makes the pause sound like patience. He dresses up fear in the language of faith and hands it to you like a gift, and you receive it because it sounds exactly like something God would say. The insidious nature of this particular trial lies in its masterful disguise. It arrives not as a glaring red flag of temptation, but as a subtle, almost holy-sounding whisper, making delay appear to be the epitome of prudence. It doesn't present itself as blatant disobedience, but as elevated caution, cloaked in the robes of spiritual maturity. The adversary, having millennia of experience in spiritual warfare, understands the hearts of the chosen. He knows that overt temptations, laziness, overt sin, obvious distractions, are easily recognized and resisted by those whose spirits yearn for alignment with heaven. Instead, he employs a far more sophisticated strategy, a spiritual Trojan horse. He tempts you not with indolence, but with what appears to be profound discernment, not with recklessness, but with what masquerades as godly wisdom. He injects the venom of inaction into your spirit, but labels it as waiting on the Lord, making a deferral feel like a sacred act of patience. He wraps your deepest fears in the gilded paper of spiritual language, presenting it as a prudent request for more time, more preparation, more confirmation, arguments that sound entirely reasonable, entirely responsible, and disturbingly like something a truly devout soul would utter. This is the enemy's most cunning tactic, to use the very lexicon of faith to immobilize faith itself. He makes the chains of stagnation sparkle like jewels of spiritual insight, leading you to believe that your reluctance is a testament to your depth, rather than a surrender to fear. He whispers, "Surely God would want you to be absolutely certain, perfectly equipped, flawlessly prepared," thereby twisting genuine spiritual prudence into a paralyzing perfectionism that prevents any forward movement. This false wisdom becomes a sophisticated prison, built not with visible bars, but with invisible threads of what if and not yet, effectively hijacking your divine momentum under the guise of spiritual integrity. Think of Moses at the burning bush. Here is a man who spent 40 years in the wilderness being prepared. 40 years of silence, obscurity, and what must have felt like irrelevance. And when God finally speaks, when the divine summons arrives wrapped in fire that does not consume, what does Moses do? He argues. He says, "Who am I that I should go?" He says, "What if they do not believe me?" He says, "I am not eloquent. I am slow of speech. I am slow of tongue." Moses is not being dishonest. He genuinely believes those things about himself. But God's response is not a pep talk. God does not say, "You're right, let me find someone more qualified." God says, "Who made your mouth? Was it not I? Now go." That is the sound of a divine command that does not negotiate with your self-assessment. Consider the ancient narrative of Moses, a man forged not in palaces of power, but in the desolate crucible of the wilderness. For 40 grueling years he traversed barren lands, tending sheep, lost in the vast expanse of obscurity. 40 years passed, a lifetime of silent anonymity, where his regal past as a prince of Egypt faded into the sands of memory, replaced by the humble existence of a shepherd. This long, arduous season must have felt like an eternity of irrelevance, a prolonged stripping away of any earthly identity or ambition. And then, from the heart of a burning bush, ablaze with fire that defied consumption, the voice of the Almighty shatters the 40-year silence. The divine summons, potent and undeniable, descends upon him. What is Moses' immediate response? Does he leap into action, invigorated by the power of the Most High? No. He argues. He quibbles with the divine directive, presenting a litany of perceived inadequacies. "Who am I," he questions, "that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" He then erects a shield of self-doubt. What if they do not believe me or listen to me? What if they say, "The Lord has not appeared to you"? Finally, he laments his lack of oratorical prowess. "O my Lord, I am not eloquent, either in the past or since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and of tongue." Moses was not attempting to deceive God. His self-assessment was painfully real to him, etched into his soul by years of isolated introspection. But the Creator of the universe did not offer a comforting platitude or a motivational speech. He did not say, "You're absolutely right, Moses. Your perceived limitations are too great. Let me search for someone more polished, more confident, more articulate." No, the divine reply cut through every excuse, every self-imposed barrier with unyielding authority. "Who made man's mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf, seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you shall speak." This is the thunder of a divine command, a declaration of sovereign power that utterly refuses to engage in negotiations with your human self-assessment, your perceived deficiencies, or the stories you've accumulated about yourself. It is the voice that reminds you that the very capacities you doubt were designed by the one who now calls you to use them. And here is what I need you to understand about Moses in that moment. His hesitation was not rooted in rebellion. It was rooted in something far more dangerous. It was rooted in a story he had been telling himself for 40 years. A story that said he was the wrong person, in the wrong place, at the wrong time. And the enemy had been reinforcing that story for 4 decades. So when the burning bush appeared, the interference did not look like opposition. It looked like humility. It looked like Moses just being honest about his limitations. But God saw through it immediately, because God never confuses genuine humility with agreement with the enemy's narrative about who you are. This is a critical insight, pivotal to understanding your own journey. Moses' initial reluctance, his earnest protestations, were not born of a defiant spirit or an unwillingness to serve. His heart, deep down, desired to align with God. Rather, his hesitation was anchored in something far more insidious, a spiritual malignancy that had taken root over 4 decades in the desert soil of his soul. It was a deeply ingrained narrative, a self-woven tapestry of inadequacy that declared him to be the wrong person for such a monumental task, existing in the wrong place for divine elevation, at precisely the wrong time for such a grand interruption. And for those 40 years, the enemy, ever the subtle architect of doubt, had been meticulously reinforcing every thread of that damaging story. He had whispered, "You're a forgotten fugitive, a murderer with blood on his hands, a failed leader, a man of stammering speech." These were not direct attacks, but insidious affirmations of Moses' own worst fears and self-perceptions. So, when the fiery manifestation of God's presence pierced the desert air, the spiritual interference that Moses encountered did not manifest as overt opposition or a demonic blockade. It appeared as a comforting, familiar cloak of humility. It felt like simple, brutal honesty about his limitations, a transparent admission of his perceived weaknesses. It felt spiritually mature to articulate his lack of eloquence, his historical failings, his unsuitability. Yet God, whose gaze penetrates the deepest recesses of the human heart, saw immediately past the veneer of self-effacement. He understood that genuine humility is a posture of submission to divine will, not an agreement with the enemy's disempowering narrative about who you are, what you're capable of, or what your destiny holds. God never mistakes a surrender to personal insecurity for true meekness. He discerns the subtle difference between acknowledging one's creatureliness before the Creator and allowing the voice of the accuser to define one's potential. And that is where you are right now. You have been agreeing with a story. Not a story someone else told you about your potential, but a story you have been telling yourself about your timing, your readiness, your worthiness to carry the thing God already placed in your hands. And that agreement has been the lock on the door that should have opened months ago. And this ancient struggle echoes in your present reality, reverberating in the very chambers of your spirit today. You, much like Moses, have unknowingly entered into an agreement with a story. This isn't necessarily a narrative imposed upon you by external voices, though those can certainly contribute. This is a far more insidious tale, one intricately woven by your own thoughts, articulated in the silent monologue of your mind. It's a story about your timing. I'm not in the right season, the stars aren't aligned yet. It's a story about your readiness. I need more courses, more certifications, more self-improvement before I can truly begin. It's a profound questioning of your worthiness. Who am I to steward such a significant purpose, to carry this divine weight? You've allowed past failures, perceived flaws, and a distorted reflection of your capabilities to construct a fortress of self-doubt. This internal narrative has become the very prison you inhabit, a self-imposed limitation that holds you captive. This unspoken, often unconscious agreement with these self-limiting beliefs has functioned as a formidable lock, fastening shut the door to the very opportunities, the very breakthroughs, the very divine mandates that should have been accessible to you not weeks, but months, even years ago. You possess the key, your identity in Christ, your divine calling, but the belief in the story has kept your hand from turning it. It's a spiritual paralysis, a stagnation born not of external force, but of internal consent. This agreement has transformed your destiny into a deferred dream, your purpose into a perpetual promise, always just out of reach because you've subconsciously consented to the narrative of not yet. But here's where it goes deeper, because breaking agreement with the story is only the first movement. And what's coming in just a moment, the thing beneath even that, is the layer that most people never reach. The layer that, once you see it, explains everything. Before we get there, let me give you something to hold on to as we move forward. The test you have been in is not a test of your discipline, it is a test of your identity. God is not trying to see if you can execute a task. He already knows what you are capable of. He designed your capability. He is testing whether you know it too. Because an assignment carried by someone who does not believe they were built for it will always stall. Not because the work is too hard, but because the carrier keeps laying it down every time the weight of it reminds them that it is real. But now we must descend further, beneath the surface of mere agreement with a story, into a profounder truth. For breaking that agreement, while crucial, is only the initial tremor of awakening. What unfolds next, in this very moment, is the bedrock truth, the subterranean layer that most never excavate. A revelation that, once grasped, illuminates the entire landscape of your struggle and clarifies every past delay. Hold this truth close as we venture deeper. The authentic nature of the test you've been navigating is not a measure of your discipline, your work ethic, or your capacity for self-exertion. No, the test you are in is a profound examination of your identity. God, the grand architect of your very being, does not need to assess your talent or your ability to execute a task. He imprinted those capabilities within you before you drew your first breath. He doesn't require proof of your potential. He himself authored it. The real question, the true essence of this test, is whether you know it too. Do you truly believe the divine blueprint of who you are? Do you stand in the conviction that you were specifically designed, meticulously crafted, and powerfully equipped for the very assignment He has placed in your hands? Because an assignment, no matter how divinely appointed, when carried by someone who harbors a deep-seated disbelief in their inherent capacity and divine suitability, is destined to stall. It's not the inherent difficulty or monumental scale of the task that causes the halt. No, it is the fundamental incongruence between the sacred weight of the assignment and the fragile, self-doubting hands that attempt to carry it. The carrier, still wrestling with their true identity, perpetually lays down the burden, not because the load is unbearable, but because every pulse of its reality, every echo of its significance, serves as a searing reminder of their own internal conflict, their unaddressed disbelief in the divine strength dwelling within them. It's like a priceless, potent elixir entrusted to a vessel that constantly questions its own integrity, leaking its power through doubt. The true weight is not external, but internal, the weight of an identity yet to be fully embraced. You have been treating your purpose like a suggestion, like something you will get to when you feel ready. But purpose does not operate on your emotional timeline. Purpose operates on a heavenly one, and heaven does not issue summons to people who are fully prepared. Heaven issues summons to people who are fully surrendered. There is a difference, and that difference is everything. This vital distinction illuminates the chasm between human expectation and divine operation. You have, perhaps unwittingly, relegated your sacred purpose to the realm of a mere suggestion, an optional endeavor you will eventually undertake when the mythical feeling of readiness descends upon you. You've placed your spiritual calling on a deferment plan, waiting for an ideal emotional climate, a surge of inspiration, or a perfect alignment of internal and external conditions. But divine purpose, beloved, is not subject to the mercurial tides of human emotion or the fluctuating state of your personal comfort. It does not wait for your feelings to align. Purpose operates on a heavenly timeline, a rhythm and a cadence established by the divine orchestrator, wholly independent of your subjective experiences. And here is a profound truth that shatters conventional wisdom. Heaven does not issue its momentous summons to individuals who are fully prepared, impeccably credentialed, or flawlessly confident. If that were the case, the rosters of divine purpose would remain perpetually empty, for who among us can ever claim such absolute readiness? Instead, heaven issues its weighty summons to those who are fully surrendered. There is a cosmic, immeasurable difference between being prepared and being surrendered, and that difference, my friend, is everything. Preparedness often implies an accumulation of resources, knowledge, and self-assurance, and "I can do this" rooted in personal ability. Surrender, on the other hand, is an emptying, a radical trust that declares, "I can't do this, but God can do it through me." It's a relinquishing of control, a humble submission to the divine will, even when the path is shrouded in mist and the destination unclear. It's saying, "Here I am, send me," despite a pounding heart and trembling hands, knowing that the power is not derived from self, but from the source of all power. This surrender opens the floodgates for divine anointing and supernatural enablement, something no amount of human preparation can ever achieve. This is where the real turning point begins. Because once you understand that you have been waiting for a feeling that God never promised you, the feeling of readiness, the feeling of certainty, the feeling that all the conditions have aligned perfectly, once you see that, something breaks open. That feeling you have been waiting for is not a prerequisite for obedience. It is a reward of it. You do not feel ready and then move. You move and readiness comes. This understanding marks the true genesis of your turning point, the pivotal shift in your spiritual journey. For too long, you have been held captive by the illusion of a promised feeling, the elusive sensation of absolute readiness, the comforting warmth of certainty, the deceptive expectation that all conditions must align perfectly before you can take the consecrated step. This waiting for an emotional green light, a subjective assurance that God never pledged as a precondition for your obedience, has been the very anchor holding you in stagnation. But once this truth crystallizes in your spirit, once you truly grasp that this sought-after feeling is a phantom, a figment of human desire rather than a divine prerequisite, something profound breaks open within you. It's like a dam bursting, releasing years of pent-up spiritual potential, like scales falling from your eyes, revealing a path you thought was hidden. That elusive feeling you've been chasing, that comfortable sense of being perfectly poised, is not the key that unlocks obedience. Rather, it is the magnificent reward of obedience itself. It is the fruit, not the root. You do not wait until you feel ready to move. That is a dangerous reversal of divine order. Instead, you move in faith. You take the initial, audacious step, and in the very act of that movement, readiness descends upon you like a mantle. The confidence blossoms not before the leap, but in mid-air. The clarity emerges not prior to the journey, but with each step taken. This is the divine economy of faith. Action begets assurance. Obedience births empowerment. The feeling of being ready is not a starting point to be attained, but a destination to be discovered through the courageous act of walking into the unknown, trusting the one who calls you. It's the difference between perpetually preparing for a voyage and actually hoisting the sails. The wind catches the sails only when they are unfurled. Think of Peter stepping out of the boat. Jesus says, "Come," and Peter does not spend 3 minutes calculating the wind speed and the wave height and whether his swimming ability is sufficient for the conditions. He steps out, and the water holds him, not before he steps, but the moment his foot makes contact with it. The miracle was on the other side of the movement, not on the thinking side, not on the planning side. The miracle was on the other side of the step. And that one thing you have been carrying, that thing that is still pressing on your chest even as you hear this message right now, the water is going to hold you too. But you have to get out of the boat. Cast your mind back to that tumultuous night on the Sea of Galilee, a powerful biblical illustration of this very principle. Jesus, walking on the storm-tossed waves, issues a simple 2-word invitation to Peter. "Come." Peter, impulsively, audaciously, does not pause for a meteorological assessment of the Galilean tempest. He does not engage in a rapid-fire calculation of the wind speed, the height of the surging waves, or an evaluation of his own aquatic prowess and survival skills. He doesn't deliberate on the logistical implications or consult with his fellow disciples for a consensus. No. In an extraordinary act of immediate, faith-fueled obedience, Peter steps out. He pushes past the rational fears, beyond the apparent impossibility of the physics, and places his foot onto the churning, unstable surface. And what happens in that precise moment? The water, against all natural law, becomes solid beneath his feet. The miracle of sustained flotation does not precede his action. It manifests the very instant his foot makes contact with the impossible. The divine power that defied gravity was not activated on the thinking side of the boat, nor on the planning side, but on the other side of the audacious step. The breakthrough, the supernatural enablement, was a direct consequence of his movement. This profound truth resonates with the weight of the assignment you carry, that sacred purpose that continues to press upon your chest, a gentle but insistent reminder, even as these words reach your ears right now. Understand this with absolute clarity. The water is going to hold you too. The divine support you require is already ordained, already prepared, waiting to manifest. But the miracle cannot begin while you remain tethered to the perceived safety and familiarity of the boat of your comfort zone, the boat of your self-doubt, the boat of your what-ifs. You have to make the move. You have to step out. It is in that courageous disembarkation, that faith-filled plunge into the unknown, that you will discover the unshakable foundation of God's provision and power. Now, once you understand that, you are ready for this. And this is the part that changes the trajectory of everything you do after today. There is a difference between delay and suspension. Delay is what the enemy creates to steal your momentum. But suspension, holy suspension, is what God uses to set the atmosphere for a release that cannot be stopped once it begins.